All right, Big Man, today is Tuesday. It's December 14th. Welcome to the Dog Walk, presented by Barstool Sports. Here with Chief, as always. Chief, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
We're doing well. We're doing well. From what I understand, you want to stay in that same region of the world.
Yeah, so we did the Ukraine-Russia crisis, and the one of the overwhelming feedbacks of that episode was like, you got to talk about what's going on with Poland and Belarus. And it's like, well, I didn't even know anything was going on. So you got Russia, Ukraine dominating the headlines, and then you look into what's going on. It's a fucking wild story. And I think we've talked about this dictator in the past, the Belarus dictator Lukashenko.
The name sounds very familiar, but
I think it was like maybe 2020, so probably over a year ago. Mm-hmm. And so we'll circle back. We'll give everybody a refresher on this guy and then talk about this crisis, because it is a crisis and it is crazy.
All right. That should get people's ears perked up.
Yeah.
But before we get into it, I do want to say, you know, when it comes to dude wipes,
mm-hmm.
and we're talking about all these places that are a long flight away.
Yeah.
You should be packing these miniature single wipes for your flights.
I want, because these, we'll get into it, but there's these thousands of people that are like basically encamped in this zone that they can't get out of they're basically just in the woods. They need dude wipes more than anybody. I wish I had the means. I would take an airplane and do like an airdrop, like it was Band of Brothers, and just
dude
drop
products,
in nothing but dude products. And that would like raise morale and raise the living ability for those people in there. 10x, 20x. So
big time. Dude
wipes has done that for me. I can't even imagine what it would do for people in that situation.
Big time. I agree. And you know what I mean? Like it's pretty much the last case scenario. Like you never want to take a shit on a plane.
Oh yeah.
Like that's just.
Have you ever had to do that?
Not since I've been an adult.
Yeah.
No.
I'm trying to think
maybe
if
as
I've
a
ever done
kid
it.
I did it, but not that I've been
I've definitely done an airport shitter, which is unpleasant too.
Oh yeah, those are not great.
You get delayed, and all of a sudden you get the rumble guts, and you guys got to make a run for it. That's not great. But if you have dude wipes,
that's why I keep 3 of them in my travel bag. With,
you are like basically a Boy Scout. Like you're just fucking prepared for everything.
I'm being honest. It's just come so. Like standard with like the toothbrush and the fucking,
it's
the
in your
Tums
toiletry bag,
and all that stuff's in the toiletry bag.
Yep.
So make sure it's in yours as well. Go to dudewipes.com. Use code BC15 for 15% off your entire order. You can also find them on Amazon, Walmart, Target, nationwide. So they're everywhere, folks. But use our code. Use our code that lets them know that we sent you, and it means a lot to us. And we love dude wipes. That's a genuine thing. So
you really like. That's not a joke.
It's not.
You got the bidet. You smell like dude wipes. I still say my favorite product is the shower.
I'm a dude wiper 1000 guy, but I like those too.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah.
So we had an interview earlier today that I got fucked up on the time zones for, and I had another call in the morning. I had no time for a shower.
Oh, so
a traditional
shower?
I dude showered myself.
See?
You didn't notice.
Dude, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
Dude shower is key for time zone fuck-ups. So, dudewipes.com, BC15. All right, let's get into the Belarus. I said that like Tony Soprano.
Yeah. But yeah, so this is what's going on there. So I kind of alluded to it during that ad read. But you have another migrant crisis on the border, mostly with Poland and Belarus, but also with Latvia and Belarus and Lithuania with Belarus. And if you'll notice, there's one thing that Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland all have in common, besides they share the border with Belarus. They're all members of the EU. And that's where we'll get back to that bit. But basically, you have same thing as before. So in 2014, 2015, when like Syria was on fire and you had Afghanistan, Iraq was, ISIS was going. Remember, you just see the news was just dominated by these people trying to escape these terrible civil war zone type places, and they're getting on these boats and they're walking across Turkey. They're getting on these boats and going to Cyprus and Greece and Crete and just Italy, just trying to get out of these places that are just so horrible and unlivable, and trying to like give themselves a new life. And that was in 2014-15. The situations on the ground in some of these places that they're coming from haven't really changed or improved that much. But the migrant the migrant crisis has really gone down like 95% from its peak in 2014. So it's like, how do they do that? And now we're having this escalation again up in Poland. So we'll kind of get to that. But the reason it's the migrants are now being used as like pawns in geopolitical struggles. And so this guy and we alluded to him earlier, this guy Lukashenko, who is known as like the last true dictator of Europe. And Belarus became a country when the Berlin Wall fell. So they used to be part of Russia, like Minsk was part of the USSR. USSR collapses, and you have all these kind of like satellite nations gain their independence. And Lukashenko was elected as the president in 1994. He has been reelected 6 times. Every single election, the UN, they do like their studies on him to see if they're like fair and legal and all that. Every single one of them has been like, this is bullshit. This is a bullshit election, including the one in 2020, which is why we talked about him last time. And in 2020, Lukashenko officially got 80% of the vote. So, hey, coming back another 4 years or 5 years, however long their terms are. But this time, the people were like, fuck this. Like, this is bullshit. Like, we've had enough of this guy. And, like, they want to be more, this guy Lukashenko, his only and his biggest ally is Putin. So they're they share one border with to the west is Poland, to the east is Russia. And so not the people, but Lukashenko himself has really cozied up to Putin and has beefs with the West. So they have this election and they have this massive protest. And in response to the protest, Lukashenko says, all right, fuck these people. Okay. And he just starts like sending out the military, sending out his police force, just beating the shit out of people, arresting people. They arrested 7,000. There were hundreds of documented reports of protesters being beaten, tortured, this and that. Like,
holy shit.
Like he's really like cracking down big time. And the woman who ran against him in that 2020 election, she's like, I have to flee the country. Like she lost. There were people supporting her. She took her husband and her kids and got the fuck out. Like, this is just not a safe place for us. Like, they knew that they were probably next. They were getting threats. So they got out of Belarus. And because of all these, this violence against the protesters and like the allegations of the rigged election, the EU responded and put sanctions. Like they're like, hey, like we're putting these economic sanctions on Belarus. So like the trading, this and that, energy, all sorts of things that will like impact their economy and his regime, Lukashenko's regime. They go into effect. Lukashenko says, fuck you. And he doubles down. He arrests 27,000 civilians. Okay. So one round of sanctions, so, hey, your election wasn't free and fair. They have protests, like organic protests come up from the people, cracks down on that. The EU comes back and says, hey, like this is bullshit. They put on sanctions. He says, hey, fuck your sanctions. I'm going to arrest more people. 27,000 civilians get arrested. And this is all happening within the last.
Where do you put 27,000 people?
They got prisons all over the place.
Oh, really?
So they got prisons all over the country. And I'm sure they're overloaded and this and that, but they have like.
They're just stuff them in like a United Center type deal?
Yeah, stuff like they're sardines, right? And they don't care about the conditions. Like, fuck them.
That's fucked.
Okay. So the EU doubles down. Okay, like, hey, you're arresting more civilians? Okay, we're going to give you more sanctions. Lukashenko doesn't even blink. Okay, so now it's up to May 2021 where they have imposed these sanctions and he's cracking down on people. And there's been this almost like the guy Navalny in Russia. There was a journalist who was outside the country. He's from Belarus, but outside the country. And he was taking a flight on Ryanair over Belarus land space or airspace, and I think he was going to either Lithuania or Latvia. Somehow they knew this journalist was on that. It's like a passenger flight, like Ryanair. It's like a major airline out of Ireland. Somehow they knew he was on that flight, and they took their Air Force. They go right alongside the plane, force it to land in Belarus, take him off the plane, arrest him, and force him to admit and confess to plotting riots on camera, and then they release that. And now he's in Belarus under house arrest, but no one's seen from him or heard from him
What
since.
the fuck?
Yeah, so it wasn't a flight that took off in Belarus. It wasn't going to land in Belarus.
Sorry, where'd you say it took off again?
Somewhere from the south. I can't remember exactly where, but it was flying from south to north over Belarus. They scramble their Air Force, be like, if you don't land this plane right fucking now, we're blowing you out of the sky. And so the pilot, was like Ryanair pilot. What the fuck? He's not going to, land the plane. And they arrest the journalist and force this like confession. Like, yeah, I was plotting riots. Okay, well, now you're under house arrest in Belarus for indefinitely. Fuck off. So now he can't work anymore. So then now the EU is like, what the fuck, right? Like, so they come back and they come with a third and a fourth round of even stricter sanctions. So this guy Lukashenko is starting to feel it a little bit, but he doesn't want to cave in because then like he's going to be out of power and tried and arrested and this and that. And he's still currently in power, but he basically has manufactured another migrant crisis. So the reason the migrant crisis stopped was because basically the EU extended their borders to a degree. So the EU does not include Turkey, but they outsourced their border security to Turkey because everybody was coming from Iraq, Syria, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, etc., and walking over Turkey, getting to Turkey's westernmost coast and taking a short boat ride over to one of the Greek islands, like you're basically in the movie Troy. Like people don't realize how close Greece and Turkey actually are to each other. They're neighbors. And so and then people are taking off from Tunisia, but mostly coming through Turkey, getting on a boat, going to Cyprus, going to Greece, going to Italy, and like a shorter, easier boat ride for the most part. And a boat ride, while like very dangerous, like there's been many reports of these, because they're on these little shitty boats most of the time, right? And they capsize and people drown and lost at sea. The whole thing is like a very scary thing. But because the EU was paying Turkey, basically being like, stop letting people over your border. We'll pay you to stop letting people in from Iraq and Syria and these other places, so we don't have to deal with it at the border and these people getting on boats. But the crisis doesn't go away, but it's just not in headline news because Turkey's dealing with it over here for a fee. Okay, so they outsource all their security to Turkey, so these boats and shit aren't coming over.
Hey, let's take a quick break here, Chief, because we got to talk about Roman. Obviously, we're talking about some heavy shit right here, but
Yep.
you don't want this kind of stuff in your mind when you're getting a business.
No way. You want to be in the moment. That's what Roman allows you to do.
Exactly.
Are we talking swipes?
We're talking swipes.
Okay.
We're talking swipes. I don't want you, thinking about this stuff when you're lasting longer, Chief. I just want you to just swipe instead.
I mean, this is the most romantic time of the year. You want to be, a little holiday, step under that mistletoe, get the mood right, go home. And then, you want to swipe it on, let her know that you're going to be in the moment. You're going to be here for a good time, for a long time, the appropriate amount of time. And you can do that thanks to Roman swipes.
Yep. Clinically proven way to last longer in bed, people. That's the key word there. Clinically proven. Effective, easy to use, and fast acting. Doesn't require a prescription. Discreet, unmarked packaging. Very, very, very easy to use. Swipe it on, let it dry. You're good to go. That's it. Go to GetRoman.com/walk. You get your first month of swipes for just $5 when you choose a monthly plan. That's GetRoman.com/walk. Go get it, folks. I mean, everyone wants to do a better job. So make sure you're doing a better job during this holiday season. All right, let's get back into the episode.
So Lukashenko announces, out of the blue, hey, I'm now, we're not going to stop anybody from going to the EU. So nobody was going up through fucking Belarus before from the Middle East. It's not like super far, but it's like 1,000-mile walk. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, hey, just so you know, because that was never like one of the flashpoints for the previous migrant crisis. Just so you know, we're not going to stop anybody. Okay.
Wow.
So they start going to like these places in Iraq and Syria, Lebanon, et cetera, like I said, and giving out tourist visas. And then they were taking their state-run airline and running double the amount of flights from Minsk, their capital, to these different, destitute places in the Middle East, loading up migrants, flying them back to Minsk, putting them on buses, and shipping them to the border with Poland and Lithuania and Latvia, mostly to Poland. So it's like you have this area, okay? So now they're coming over the border. This is like a month ago. They're coming over the border to Poland. And Poland's like, what the fuck? They have like these, they have barbed wire fences and things like that. They have like their own wall. And these migrants were taking like trees, cutting down the trees, like giant trees, like 30-foot, 40-foot trees, and cutting down the trees in a way that would fall on the fence and collapse the fence, and then they would run over to get past like the checkpoint. So now Poland responds, and they put their whole military, not their whole military, but a lot of troops, like maybe as many as 7,000 troops stationed along the border to be like, you can't come in here. Like, you're not coming in here. And, protecting their borders, and they don't want this influx of people coming in. And Lithuania and Latvia did similar things, but Poland is more of an advanced society and more an advanced economy than Lithuania or Latvia. So most of the immigrants were trying to get to Poland because then it's easier access to Germany, and then you're just into Europe. And so that's why Poland was the main thing. So they come here. Lukashenko basically personally flies them into Minsk, personally drives them to the border, gives them these tourist visas, and then they're getting stopped at the border. So Lukashenko, in response, so people are like, well, we can't get in. He's like, can we stay here? Fuck no, you can't stay here. So you're like, all those tourist visas, hey, those are expired now. Can we go back home? You can't go back home. So he put his troops behind the migrants. And, we're talking thousands and thousands of people. So if you watch, like, we get a lot of the coverage of the caravans coming up from Central America, and it looks like a lot, right? It's a lot of people coming up. When you see like the amount, and maybe it's just a congested area, but there's videos of these people. It's like a fucking line at like Tower of Terror at Disney, like thousands of people trying to get in to these checkpoints and living along the borders. And they're in these like shitty camps where they're like making their heat by fire. Cause now it's not like you're coming over the Mexican border. It's in fucking, Siberia, basically. Like, this is a cold area, and this is happening like with all right now. So in the winter. So people are dying. People are starving. They're cold. They're shitting outside. They don't have dude wipes. It's a disaster, and they're not allowed to leave. So they can't get back to Minsk because they're to get on a flight home because Lukashenko's blocking them. They can't get into Poland. They're just fucking stranded in the middle. And Lukashenko is basically just using them as pawns, being like, hey, like, if you want us to stop this border crisis, just relieve the sanctions and we'll ship them back. And they're like, well, we can't release the sanctions. So that's like, he manufactured this crisis because he knows it's like a fucking checkmate move, right? So,
dude, this is unbelievable.
It's crazy. It's a crazy story. So you have these like thousands of people trapped at these like kind of checkpoint areas by the fence because Poland's blocking them on one end, and then Lukashenko and the Belarus military and police aren't letting them go back into Minsk or go back, like, leave that area. So you're just like stuck. And now in the last week or so, because like the UN and people are stepping up the pressure, they have allowed some of the migrants to leave that fence area, but they put them in basically a warehouse. So it's still cold, but at least they're inside, but they're not like able to get back to the capital, and they're not able to get back to Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, or wherever they came, Afghanistan. So they like entice these people, be like, hey, we know Turkey's not letting you cross anymore. Why don't you come north? Here's a tourist visa. And so to the point that they got, like I said, maybe 100,000 or, these thousands and thousands of people to be like, yep, I'm going to uproot my entire family, our entire history of where my family has lived, and just try to get into Europe because now we have a way. We'll take this flight on some shitty airline from wherever in Syria up to Minsk, free bus ride to the border, and then they get out and it's like, well, fuck yourself. And they know because the EU for the last 7 years now has been paying Turkey, they pay Morocco, they pay Tunisia, all these countries that are like on the outskirts of the border, Libya, that are near places where it would be an easy launching point, Algeria, etc., to go from these war-torn areas into Europe. The EU was like basically just paying, and then like Turkey and all these places come back and they're like, hey, just so you know, we need more money now, or we can't handle this anymore. So these other countries, like, they made this deal, and then they have Europe by the balls because Europe doesn't want to deal with this crisis, but it's like so they can just keep upping the price basically forever, because the alternative is you're going to have all these people coming into your countries if you don't just keep paying us. So they're kind of, in a way, these different countries, Belarus included now, are extorting the EU for security, just trying to keep people from like this migrant flow into Europe like we saw in 2014. And that's kind of where it is now. So you have like that part of the world is in like big time crisis now, because you have the Ukraine-Russia situation going on. You have this migrant, and it's all like, they're all like right within, a few hundred miles of each other. The Ukraine situation, maybe 1,000 miles. Ukraine situation, Belarus, Latvia, Lithuania, and Putin's just back there probably sitting and smiling, because it's like his guy is fucking with the EU, I'm fucking with the EU, and it's just like there's just no like resolution in sight for these people. And it's just like they got sold a bill of goods, risked everything, left everything, and now they're just fucked in the cold at the border with no place to go.
This is insane.
It's an insane story. And it's
poor
one of the
people, dude. Like,
they're
horrible.
They're complete victims in this situation. Because, I want to get out of the situation where my country's on fire and everybody's killing each other and we're in the civil war. Like, no shit, you don't want to raise your family there. You want to give your, and you see like the footage of these people. And they, I'm sure they bring the children out for the cameras, but like your heart just breaks.
Yeah.
Looking at like there's a 4-year-old kid who was yanked out of a war-torn area, traveled across Europe, and now he's just stuck. And it's like, what is that kid supposed to do? Nothing. Like hey, fuck you, Lukashenko's this way, Polish army's this way. Like there's nowhere to go. And
dude's fucking maniacal, man.
He's a crazy person. He's like legitimately like a dictator, crazy person, because he doesn't care about anybody except for himself and his own power. So, and he knows that he's got the support of Putin. So
how does this get resolved without there being a war?
I don't know if there will be a war over this, because it's not like Poland's ever going to cross. It would almost be like Lukashenko would have to just like on camera, like mow these people down with machine guns and tanks and shit, and then like there would be a humanitarian response. But like, I don't know what you do. Like they've already like pressured him to the point where he did put them in like warehouses, which is better than being outside. But there's no like end in sight really for the crisis on large, and it's only getting colder. And
yeah, but I mean, isn't there a thing here if like he's the biggest problem and they know it's corrupt, that like if they just take him down, then they could like get control and like have better relations with that country? I mean,
what are you talking? You want to have the CIA go in and assassinate this guy like the old days?
I mean,
and then it's like you got a problem with Putin. Like if you go in and try to knock this guy out, Putin will respond in kind in some way, some part of the world. Who knows? But it's like you can't just go do that. So you need like...
What did basically do with Saddam or no?
Excuse me. We invaded Saddam. We invaded...
Well, that's what I'm saying, like an invasion. Like not, not go one-on-one with him, but like you invade them and you take them down.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the sanctions can get so hard that the guy just like gives up. But like, do you want to send troops into fucking Belarus knowing that could trigger a response from Putin? Like, I don't. So I don't know what the answer is, but this is fucked, and it's one of those things that needs more attention. So I'm glad we're talking about it now. I'm glad people recommended it, because just the idea of just being like, hey, like I know we told you to come here because you can cross into Europe and make a better life for yourself and your family. Fuck you. Like this is not about you. This is about us getting back at Europe in the EU for putting sanctions on us for rigging elections and killing and arresting our own people. So it's like, I don't know what the answer is. I hope there's someone smarter than us out there that can figure this out. But right now, it's like an untenable situation. It's like, I don't know how you get out of it.
They really got it coming from both ends, huh?
With Poland, maybe, but it's like, if you're Poland and you're looking at what Russia's doing to
Ukraine.
Thank you, Harry. Like, you don't want to like piss off Putin too, because like you're there. It just seems like every major conflict kind of starts with one of these like second tier countries. Like World War I, that starts in Sarajevo. World War II really started when Germany invaded Poland. Like that was the last straw. And they just, and one of the flashpoints during the Cold War was always in Poland too, because that was like a communist Russian satellite country that eventually they were one of the first ones to like really rebel and caused the collapse of communism in Europe. So it's like Poland, they have like the memory of those things. They know how bad it was and how bad, like, and it's not like their dad has to tell them, or not like their great grandpa, like, oh, you should remember the Civil War like we had here, or like you learned about it in school. It's like, it's still very much a reality and like built into their psyche of how bad things can get with Russia and with Germany. So they want to just kind of keep things. Probably they just want to protect their border, but I don't even know if it's in your best interest, if you're Poland, to go in. Because then it's like, if you trigger something, then Putin's just going to come to this guy's defense. And then, then who knows? Like, they share a border with Russia too, right around the northern coast. They, like, Russia negotiated this little strip of land so they can have access to that, like, what is it, the Baltic Sea up there. So
that Turkey thing was pretty interesting too.
Yeah.
Because I've always been under the impression Turkey doesn't fuck around.
They don't. Yeah. And that's like one of the things that, the EU has like these mandates and these laws where it's like, if people come to your border, they have like certain rights and certain, they're entitled to certain protections based under like EU like humanitarian refugee policy, which is why the EU effectively pushed their borders back to Turkey and these other places without letting Turkey into the EU. Because, hey, if you get stopped at the Turkish border, even though we're paying Turkey to do that, we're not violating our own laws. Like Poland right now, as an EU member, with the way that they're reacting to the migrants, I think is technically in violation of EU law and policy. So the reason that they like pay Turkey to like, hey, you guys fucking handle it,
is to not have to deal with it.
They don't have to deal with it, and they don't have to deal with the standards, and they can kind of look away as they take a baton to somebody's head as they're trying to cross into Turkey. So like they'll be much more aggressive about keeping people out of Turkey than they ever were, because it was just like, hey, like we're a highway to Europe, like you'll only be there for a few weeks crossing our country, so who cares? And but if they stop them at the border, then the EU doesn't really like, well, Turkey's not a member, we don't know what they're doing. But it's like, you're paying them to do that. Yeah, but we don't really know. So that's kind of where like the gray area, morally where the gray area is for the EU. But it's a fucked situation.
Crazy, man.
Yeah.
This is very fucked.
Extremely. One of the most fucked situations in the world
for
right
real,
now.
Man.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. We'll continue to talk about it maybe if there's updates.
Just don't trust Lukashenko. Like, that's the lesson. Can't trust that
I do
guy.
remember him. Now that I Googled him and I looked at the picture of him, I definitely remember talking about him.
Yeah, I think it was probably around the election in Belarus last year when all these protests were popping off. So So if you're wondering, if you're like remembering, like, hey, I wonder if that situation got better. Nope. got worse.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Thank you for the update. Thank you for the enlightenment.
Yeah. And thanks to the listeners who said, hey, you guys should do this topic too.
Yeah, very much. Thank you to the listeners big time, because that was an insane one. So
insane, and one that's, you probably have to kind of go looking for it, because it's not getting a lot of the media attention over here, because we got a lot of things to talk about. Juicy Smollett and all that stuff.
Well, all right, Chief. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's it for today, everybody. Thank you for listening as well. We'll see you tomorrow.